This week was my second week at Art Academy, and I mostly had to practice a method that has been used for like 200 years. The method my instructor was showing me is called comparative measurement, specifically using a technique called pencil sighting. Now, nobody can point to a single person in a room and say they invented measuring and drawing with a pencil, but this highly disciplined system of sighting was perfected and standardized by the European art academies in the 18th and 19th centuries, most famously the French École des Beaux-Arts or the School of Fine Arts. Why they invented it? Because before cameras existed, artists needed a reliable, portable tool to accurately draw massive marble statues, life models, or outdoor landscapes onto regular-sized pieces of paper. They needed a way to translate the real world onto a page without the proportions getting distorted. So how do we actually use it step by step? I chose this bottle for its interesting shape. First, we establish our boundaries with our arm completely extended and your elbow locked. You hold your pencil out to capture the maximum width and height of the object. Once you lock that measurement with your thumb, you transfer those exact dimensions straight over to your paper. This creates a box that locks in the scale of your drawing right from the start. Now that I have my box, which completely delimits exactly where my sketch will live on the page, I can start hunting for the internal shapes. To do this without guessing, I'm going to use my pencil and my thumb to measure key landmarks. First, we mark the height of the cap. Next, we find the top line of the label. Now, if we take a look at the object, the right side has a curve, the left side has an indentation, and the cap is not actually centered. So how do we make sure everything stays perfectly aligned left to right? That's where the plumb line comes in. A lot of beginners, including myself, of course, because I'm just learning about it, think a plumb line has to drop right down the exact center of the object, but that is a huge misconception. In reality, a plumb line can be any perfect vertical line you want. You can slide this vertical line anywhere across your subject. For example, if you drop it right along the left side of this bottle, it becomes a perfect reference wall. Suddenly, you can look straight down that line and measure horizontal distances, seeing exactly how far away the neck of the cap sits from that left wall. By measuring from our left plumb line over to the right side of the cap, we can clearly map it out on the paper, and now we can visually confirm that the center of the cap is completely different from the center of the bottle. Next up is the indentation. This felt like the most difficult part to get right, but we can solve it by combining our tools. We can use the bottom cap line to determine the height reference and use our left plumb line to determine exactly how deep the indentation cuts inward. By finding where those two paths cross, drawing this tricky shape stops being a guessing game. With the hard part out of the way, we can tackle the big curve on the right side. A great academy trick here is to use small, straight, angular lines to step by step map out the direction of the slope first. Once those guidelines are locked in, you just trace right over them to form a perfectly smooth curve. Now that the structural sketch is completely done, we can finally drop the rigid straight edges. I'll go back in to round out the sharp corners, add some dimensional depth to the bottle cap and clean up our construction lines.
Why don't you hear me wonder?
And these are the final results along some other objects I drew with the same measuring method. So far, I'm loving everything I've learned. This was just an introduction, and later on they will teach me more advanced techniques like side size drawing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any tips for these or other methods or suggestions, please comment down below. Also share, like, and subscribe so it helps me reach my target audience and hopefully monetize one day. See you guys next Sunday.